Hi, everybody. Good evening. If you're in the UK, this is Amina here today for the webinar on how to develop an entrepreneur mindset to your career. So feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat and post any comments or questions as we go along. Today is going to be less interactive than usual because I suddenly had a brainwave and will be presenting a lot of content today that's based on the last 2 years of my work. And it's fairly fresh content. It's still quite raw, so I'm not sure exactly what it's going to look like or land. So I'm going to focus on sharing the content, and hopefully that will be of value to you. And if you have any questions as we go along, please do post them in the chat and I will try to attend to them. If I don't, I will try and respond by email as soon as I can. All right, so what I'm going to do is to share my screen with the PowerPoint slides and just start the presentation. Yeah, so if you give me a few seconds, I'll do just that. Okay, all right. Before we start, does anybody have a burning question or about the process or any immediate sort of questions about the content? Does anybody come here with a very specific question that you want to put out there? I'll take that as a no. All right. Okay, so 80% of success is showing up as usual. So you're here and it's great and it shows commitment to your path. It shows commitment to what you want, to your dreams, to your vision. So congratulations on doing that. So today I'm going to pretty much share my journey of how I experienced becoming more of an entrepreneur towards my career and less of an employee, and essentially become what I call becoming a company of one. So essentially behaving like an entrepreneur, even if I'm within an organization. And as I thought back to how I'd gone from being a doctor who was overworked and stressed and trying to tick all the boxes and jump through the hoops, to when I actually realized my dream of working on global health policy and then going on to set up with my business, which I hadn't actually planned, but the global health policy I had, then it was really a change in mindset that enabled that. And as I mentioned, this is a slightly less interactive webinar than usual because I see a few familiar faces. So it is a bit different to the usual. But if you're interested in a more interactive version, then the next coaching sort of or question and answer interactive webinar will be on the 17th of October at 6 p.m. UK. And it will be on a very related theme, which is what to do when you don't know what to do. And this will be in collaboration with a great coach colleague of mine, Akshay Kapoor, who's I think is here. So welcome, Akshay, if you're here. It'll be a great webinar. For today, what I want to do is to be of service, share what I know of the organizational entrepreneur mindset, which is how I capture this idea of being an entrepreneur, but still possibly working in an organization. Trying to look at it practically, how it applies to use this mindset by sharing my journey and a few examples, sharing a couple of frameworks for action, and then telling you a little bit about the work I do in this area. I hope that's okay. do feel free to give me a thumbs up in the chat if you want. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm a transformational coach, but I specialize in career and leadership strategy, and I help mission-driven professionals to adopt this entrepreneurial mindset. But I try and do it in a way that incorporates a more heart-centered approach, so it's not maybe more traditional and conventional approaches, which are very rational. It does incorporate the more intuitive, creative aspects of us. I began my self-development journey when I was quite young, and I had a passion for personal transformation and social transformation, and that's why my career turned out the way it did. I had a 13-year career as a doctor specializing in health policy, and then 2 years ago, set up my own business. I have to move this across. And I've worked in a range of organizations, so I do understand how the ecosystem in big organizations and relatively smaller organizations is like. And I'm still currently an academic, and I have an honorary academic role at one of the big universities here. And I have helped hundreds of professionals. I was thinking, no, I haven't helped that many, but I have. If I count all the coaching sessions that I've had, it does extend to quite a few people. So by now, I feel I've got a very good idea of what's involved in changing our mindset from the sort of employee way of thinking to a more liberated entrepreneurial way of thinking. And that's what I want to focus on today. Some of you may know that I've created Wise Wednesdays and are readers of it. It's my weekly message, which deals with themes around what we're talking about today. The Leaders Circle, I think one or two of you have been to the Leaders Circle, which is a community of professionals who are looking at what the next steps are in their career. And it's a space to have that kind of conversation. And I'll talk a bit more about that later. I founded the RSA Coaching Network, which tries to raise awareness of coaching, but provides coaching as well pro bono for social entrepreneurs. And I handed it over yesterday after 2 years of being the lead. And I designed a sort of process, which I'm going to talk about today as well, which essentially helps us to develop a more authentic career and life, which I think is what happens to many people, or a yearning that arises for many people in the second cycle of life. In 2015 was my big transformational year. So I created my dream job, as it were, twice in 12 months, once leaping from the conventional sort of role I was expected, or path I was expected to go on, into the one that was my dream role. And then the second time creating my own business, becoming my own boss. I have to find a way to deal with this banner. Ideas from today. So why one must abandon the employee mindset, some foundational principles for operating as an independent professional, and thinking about ourselves as collaborating with organizations rather than being an employee within them, and seeing ourselves as choosing who we want to partner with. The key to getting paid, or a few keys actually, to getting paid for creating socially valuable service propositions that you can then carry forward and take wherever you go, and help you make decisions as to where you may or may not want to work. And then some thoughts about how to break out of imposter syndrome. So 3 things I didn't have to do on this journey, and I believe nobody has to, is compromise on important values, do this all alone and struggle alone, or give up on dreams, or particularly big, important dreams. We can't necessarily achieve all the dreams that come to us, but the most important ones should not be given up on, in my opinion. These are some of the things I've done, going from overworked junior doctor to doing some humanitarian work in South Sudan, to doing more public health and policy work. And there's a picture here in Alaska on the mountain, which is where I had these big mindset shifts, where I started to think differently and feel differently about the decisions I had to make, and therefore made very different decisions to what I might have made before these shifts. And here's a picture. Essentially, to me, it represents this idea that we're not alone. We're not mad for thinking that we may want to do things differently, or that breaking with traditional, conventional career pathways is wrong or dangerous. There are a lot of other people who are thinking along the same lines, and my hope and my commitment is to try and bring more of these people together to move forward together. So is this for you? Yes, if you've had great success and feel there's something bigger or more fulfilling to step into now. Maybe you feel frustrated. You're the type of person who likes autonomy and creative freedom. That definitely applied to me. And you have a lot of ideas for projects and programs or initiatives, or even a business, but you're not sure where to start or how to take the next step. And why this may be important right now, because you've probably spent a lot of time thinking about the next step, or doing research about it, or asking around about it. Maybe you're feeling the impact of the uncertainty in your industry or the job market, and you don't want to sit around for someone else to decide your future. And sometimes people express how this is creating strain in their life and relationships because they're not feeling at home in themselves, and it comes out in the relationships in the form of irritability, frustration, or just constantly asking for advice that people can't really give. So this isn't a theoretical framework. It's not an academic exercise. And it's certainly not a quick formula for short-lived success. Just a quick note on the entrepreneur archetype or stereotype. Elon Musk obviously represents that in the world. But I don't think you have to be in tech or make billions to qualify as an entrepreneur. But I do think it's about the ability to take risks, and embrace uncertainty, the ability to embrace failure and rejection and see it as learning, to have a bias for action, to have big picture thinking. So think about the bigger things in life, and also optimism. You have to imagine that something better is possible as an entrepreneur. Otherwise, you would not take the risks. So for me, it's certainly been a journey. I wasn't born an entrepreneur or in a business type of family or entrepreneurial family. And there are ups and downs. There are high points and there are low points. So again, it is not a quick formula for success. This is my experience and what I've seen from working with others who've been on a similar journey or who are on a similar journey. And how it started for me, the sort of shift from the employee to entrepreneur mindset in a clearer way. Obviously, we can all have traits around, being enthusiastic or optimistic, or maybe we have an appetite for risk. But the clearest point where I felt a real shift within me was when in 2014, I was coming to the end of my sort of conventional career path in terms of a contract I had, and I had to make decisions for the next big step. And I was told a range of things from don't worry, there'll always be jobs and opportunities for good people, which is very sort of nice and encouraging, but not very practical, to just keep your head down and go where the jobs are. So very practical. You need to make money, you need to pay your mortgage, so just go and do that. And this was from very knowledgeable senior leaders in my industry. These were people that I looked up to, and these were people that I was supposed to then become. I was, in hindsight, I'm a bit shocked, or it's a shame that I was certainly encouraged to apply for jobs that I didn't really want. just because that was the thing to do. And none of this really helped to restore my confidence or clarity. And I knew I was known for being passionate and determined, but at that point I felt completely lost. So it was very much a space between stories, now that I can look back on it. I ended up spending several months in a job that was completely wrong for me, and where I felt unappreciated and demoralized. I even developed physical symptoms of anxiety. I felt like none of the traditional sources of guidance were able to help me. So it was quite lonely and confusing. And I'd almost completely forgotten my long-held dream of working on global health, which I was very passionate about as a medical student, and for several years after that, until things started to get a little bit sort of conventional. So at that point, I had to make a decision. Not wanting to stay in confusion and being lost forever, I had to choose between two options. Either I go with a recommended safe route and take a job that I might not like, but will meet expectations and will secure my career in the long term, apparently, or I embrace the entrepreneurial mindset, take a risk and explore a different path. So from that point onwards, I was thinking, I would say, more independently. Since I hadn't received answers from the authorities, I had to start relying on my own intuition and my own decisions, or rather my own judgment, sorry. And so I decided to embrace uncertainty and follow my passion, but also take my brain with me. There's this sort of misconception that if you follow your passion, then you're gonna, fall by the wayside, because it's not really realistic. But it was important. It was a big insight to say, well, no, the good decisions I've made in the past, I can take the source of those good decisions. So I reclaimed my career capital, as it were, and invested it in my own company of one. Now, at that point, it wasn't a real company registered with the taxman here. It was just that attitude that started to be born. So really what I did is turn the uncertainty into possibility. And I started taking one small step at a time. And that very much came from the experience I had going up and coming down a mountain, where I got really frightened because I have a bit of a fear of heights. And I decided not to look at the way down, but just take one step at a time. And before I knew it, I had come down the mountain. It was a pleasant experience. And that embodied experience of it helped me to then take small steps in the career journey. I believed again that my dreams and aspirations were there for a good reason and shouldn't be neglected or swept aside. I trusted that my capacities and skills were the real source of security, not the job itself. And I started thinking like an independent professional, that I have my skills and I bring them to the table within an organization. And then I realized that's what successful professionals and leaders I admired did anyway. It's just that they don't necessarily explain it that way. So the difference between me and other colleagues who stayed on the conventional path is that I was willing to challenge the narrative we're handed of what constitutes success. I trusted that things could be done very differently and still work out. I started believing that just because I followed my own intuition and made risky decisions, I wasn't necessarily going to end up homeless. And I was willing to try things even if they didn't work. So I was willing to take an opportunity that I was warned against and say that, well, if it doesn't work out, that's fine. So that's the entrepreneurial attitude of seeing failure as an opportunity for learning, really. So there was only one way forward, And that was to deal with the uncertainty by embracing it and making the most of it. So the problem became an opportunity to spread my wings. So what I did was I quit the job that I was in, and then I sort of made a statement to myself that I quit the secure path that that job represented. I took an opportunity that was much more aligned with my dream of working on global health, even though I was told that was a bad idea, that was no job afterwards, and it was pretty much career suicide, and I'd end up in a very difficult situation. But through the opportunity, I started traveling, I started speaking, I started writing and making a name for myself on the specific topic I was working on, and was able to influence policy within my organization, but also beyond, and have an impact on the UN 2015 policy agenda, which was a big year for development policy. If you might remember that the Sustainable Development Goals were renewed that year, and the climate change agreements as well. The area I worked on was disaster risk reduction, which is related to climate change adaptation. And I learned from the best during that period. I learned from someone who was able to do these things and did them within an organization. And then within a year, I'd set up my own company. I was in a meeting, and these thoughts had been bubbling around. And I thought the meeting wasn't using my time very well. And so I just went on the company registration website and registered my company under the name Health Policy Limited or something. It's changed since. And I kept learning. So kind of trying to reverse engineer what was happening over that journey, and using a little acronym for it. What I'd say happened is that I was willing to dream big, as in I was willing to accept my big dream of working on global health. I was willing to embrace the uncertainty rather than resist it. I was willing to leap, even if it was just one step at a time. And we really don't ever have to leap more than one step at a time. I don't know if you can leap more than one step at a time anyway. I was willing to take the entrepreneurial approach of testing and learning. So saying any decision I make isn't a final decision. We're not in a baby boomer sort of career narrative where it's a job for life. Decisions about jobs these days aren't final, and every job is an opportunity to learn. Every decision is an opportunity to learn. And I was willing to appreciate and not be so negative about the situation. Appreciate myself, appreciate the opportunities, appreciate the people who were helping me. And that helped a lot. So I guess this isn't traditional career advice. When people come to me for coaching, I say I'm not a traditional career coach. I don't do sort of CVs and interviews as the primary objective. I can help with those, but that's not the main part of the service I offer. It's not sort of empty reassurance and optimism that everything's going to work out like I was told. It's not psychometric tests or sort of solutions that fit everybody. Everybody's different, and it's this is very much a personal journey that we have to go on. This journey wasn't about performing better. I was performing pretty well. There are areas where I wasn't very interested, and so I don't know that I performed well in them, although I wasn't tested in them. But I didn't try and improve my performance. I actually did what I really enjoyed and did it well. It's not about how to fit into the culture of the organization by changing your attitude. Sometimes that's necessary, but that's not something that I work on, or that's not the journey that I went on. And I'm not saying either that you have to quit your job or go into business, because that doesn't fit everybody. What the journey I've just described and has led to the work I do is about, I think, is learning to think differently as an entrepreneur by reclaiming our personal and career capital and operate and in sort of investing it in our own company. whether we're within an organization or whether you do it really in your own business. I hope that makes sense. So yeah, so after I ended up doing the big dream happened, my sort of university big dream happened of working on global health. Then I realized there was value in the learning itself, and I'd always had a passion for social and personal transformation, even for sort of principles learned from spiritual traditions, and I felt very passionate about using that somehow. And I discovered there's something called coaching that captures that. And I have a belief that fulfillment is really about learning and giving, which I'll come back to later. So here are a couple of examples. I said I would share a couple of examples from people I've worked with. So one very talented ophthalmologist I've worked with was in a hospital where it was very reactive, and she's very willing and she's very hardworking, and she was in this very busy hospital and expected to do a lot of emergency work, a lot of what we call reactive work, which was very stressful. But by learning to set boundaries and starting to reclaim her own sovereignty, as it was, starting to reclaim her rights to not be overwhelmed and to be able to have more space to think and be creative, she changed and she started to make very different decisions. And as a result, she came across an opportunity, or rather she was headhunted for this opportunity that she may have missed. I won't go into details, but she is now a service lead in a very big university hospital, and is essentially tasked to transform the service as though it really were her own company. So I was very inspired by working with her, and we've stayed great friends. And another very bright professional who was in a policy environment, not a clinical environment, we started working with, she was having a very similar experience of being in a very busy job, very reactive in terms of responding to requests from ministers and the sort of the political figures of authority, but where she felt underappreciated. She also went through this process of changing her mindset from being the person who responds and reacts and makes themselves available without restriction to everybody else's demands, to now ending up at the World Health Organization headquarters in Geneva, working pretty much at the top of the leadership. And her latest report is that she actually works less but achieves more, because she's not in that employee mindset of having to work hard. She is working from her highest talents and abilities and says no to anything that isn't of that nature. And so she's got a lot more energy and a lot more focus, and she carries herself more as her own leader, her own boss. And that's how she ended up at the top of that organization. So these are just a couple of quotes, essentially saying that that the autonomy has a big role, and recovering that autonomy is really key. All right, so just want to pause quickly and see if there are any questions or comments. Hello, Raina. Hello, Jennifer. Hello, Zwesti. Hi, Akshay. Can't see any questions, so I'll just carry on. I'll trust that this is helpful. All right. So, we've got half an hour, and I think I'm not really very far in. So we'll see how far we get. So operating as an organizational entrepreneur. What happened, trying to capture the principles of what happened to me and what happened to these two examples. There was a sense of feeling in control again and becoming their own bosses. There's a sense of developing a vision of the work and life they want, and a strategy for action to go with it. There was work to really hone their values, their mission, and their message, which really is the authentic piece. That's the authenticity piece. It's like, what do I care about and what do I want to do? Starting to see your energy as your primary capital. It's not even your knowledge and your technical expertise. It's your energy and your ability to expend that energy in a skillful way that aligns with your values, your mission, and your message, which we're not really taught in conventional organizations. We're taught the values of the organization, right? Develop skills like negotiation and conflict resolution to improve relationships, which then multiplies opportunities. Learn to share their message and be willing to be visible and speak up and share what they're about and let other people see that so that the right people can connect with them, which also multiplies opportunities. And again, learning to see the opportunity in any problem and not procrastinate or end up in analysis paralysis, but learn to take action where needed, as well as be patient and not take action when it's not needed, which saves a lot of energy. All right. So is intellectual and financial freedom possible? I think so, because one of the big things that we're scared with sometimes is that, oh, if we follow the passion and the freedom path, then we won't be financially secure. And that hasn't been my experience. It hasn't been the experience of people I work with, as far as I know. They go on to thrive more than anything else. So the great thing is you don't feel trapped in an organization, a career, or an industry. You start to recover a feeling of deep inner freedom, and your creativity is released again to write a book or to take up a hobby again, or to really think about what you want to create, if you want to create a business or an initiative or a foundation. The fear levels drop because you're creating your own opportunities, and opportunities are coming to you as a result of your commitment. You don't have to struggle hard to network and make things happen and show yourself to be the perfect employee. No more of that. And for me, definitely, there was a phase where my sleep was affected because of the stress of not being in alignment with what I really wanted to do. And so when you are back in alignment, and you're willing to take those risks as an entrepreneur, then you will feel more at peace. Obviously, I'm not saying you have to go and set up a business, just to be clear on that, because that doesn't suit everyone. Why you might not already be there. Maybe you don't know how to shift from one mindset to another. There's maybe some confusion and fear, like it was for me. Analysis paralysis for highly intelligent, intellectual people, we can get stuck there. Self-doubt about whether you can change things, whether you can take a different path to what you've been expected to take. This obviously all requires personal development, and some people are suspicious about that. They think it's not, it doesn't work. It might be an issue of time and money and resources, and just feeling like you can't really invest in your in developing yourself on a deep level. That's not guilt. That's supposed to be guilt about investing. So what I've just mentioned, or you just haven't found the right support. So again, a really important point is that how shall I put it? There are certain things that will change and certain things that don't need to change. What positive changes you will see, or what you won't have to do on this path, is to work long hours and feel exhausted and out of control all the time. So that was very clear with those the two examples that I mentioned. You don't have to play political games to fit in and make things work and make your career successful. You definitely don't have to struggle alone. You don't have to go and you don't have to give up on your lifestyle. You may have to make some financial decisions, but you don't have to make a radical shift if you do this process in a wise way. You don't have to sacrifice your personal life, and you don't have to have years of therapy to figure out what you want to do, or think that there's something wrong with you and therefore it needs to go to a therapist. So this is what I'm going to talk about next, is trying to bring that journey into a more systematic description and principles. This is what I've been working on for about a year now and what I'm still honing. So any comments you have will be much appreciated.
Squeeze a line, first career, down right there.
Ooh, hello. Did I hear somebody? Not sure what that was. Okay, well, we'll carry on for now. I'll just go back to the screen. So what I'm presenting next as a sort of approach or system is based on my experience, on the experience of the people I've worked with, and the research I've done around this. And as a foundation in terms of values, for me, authentic success is about fulfillment and meaning. And to me, that comes from constantly being in a zone of learning and giving. So learning from our experiences and then giving and sharing those experiences with others. So there's a kind of a sense of liberating others as we liberate ourselves from false expectations. So number one, so if anybody came to me and said, okay, where do I start? I'm not sure what to do. I have these big ideas, but not sure where to start. I would say number one, relax. It's going to be okay. Relax and energize yourself. Try to get a control over your energy and how you're using it. Again, coming back to this idea that as organizational entrepreneurs, our energy is our capital, and that probably applies to any entrepreneur. So mindfulness and self-care practices are important to start with, because if you've been in a stressful zone or you're in a place of anxiety and indecision, then you might have neglected the things that actually bring you joy and bring you happiness and bring you energy. And once you've got your sort of energy back and you're feeling full of zest, then it's about focusing it on the right things. So this takes us to number two, which is reflect and prioritize, because the more clearly you see what's in the way, the more clearly you can do something about it, which then gives you clarity. So you've removed the obstacle and you can see more clearly. So mindful inquiry is important. And mindfulness here, I'm using it really just as paying attention, being present to your experience, rather than papering over it and just going into a lot of rational analysis, which often doesn't help. And that will give you a greater sense of freedom and calm control, because you will see what motivates you and how you're making your decisions, and then you'll make deliberate decisions rather than just being sort of wafted around by your emotions or other people's agendas. So some of this involves learning to ask powerful questions. So rather than getting lost in lots of thinking or getting lost in sort of dual thinking or dilemmas, to go to try and formulate powerful questions. And you know they're powerful because as you ask the question, you glimpse the answer. And these powerful questions will help you to move past the surface chatter and anxiety. And it's important to get clear on your needs, because a lot of what we do is trying to meet a need, an underlying need. And things start to not work because the needs are not being met in the best way, or they're being met in an old way that's no longer adapted to your new situation. And And needs could be things like need for belonging, need for connection, need for safety, need for contribution. And these needs are prioritized differently as we move along in life. So you may have had a need for significance for a long time in your career, and then you may move to a need for connection later. So it's important to be very aware of our needs, how we're prioritizing them, and what strategies we're using to meet them. So as we go through this process, then we get deeper and deeper. So certainly when I work with people, and as we get to know each other and there's more trust, then we get to some deeper levels of transformation. And that's where the real transformation happens. It's at the emotional level. And transforming our way of thinking about our career, about anything, is an emotional process. It can't be done without tuning into the emotional part. If we don't, then we start to resist it and it stalls the process, and we just go back to what we were doing before. So we go back to the employee, busy bee mindset, confused, don't know what to do, somebody please give me the answer. So at this point, it's important to acknowledge that change does mean saying goodbye to certain things, because that then makes space for new one. And then it's a question of readiness. Are we ready to say goodbye to those things to be able to move forward? And this can apply to a way of thinking, because you may have a way of thinking or certain set of values that come from your people you love, from your family. But to move forward on your path and achieve your purpose in life, you may have to break with that to embrace something new. So for me, nobody in my family, I don't think there are any women entrepreneurs. So it was a bit strange for me to choose that path. But I chose the mission over the sort of belonging on that level with my family. So we have to give the appropriate attention to this. Again, mindfulness, so paying attention to our emotions and learning to really master the fears and the aspirations. So understand our drives, to be able to move more gracefully through the process, rather than stop and start and take detours and so on. And an important principle here is that uncertainty, don't know if it's an emotion, but the sense that there's no ground beneath you is a characteristic of change. It's what happens in the space between stories. So you have the employee story to start with, and now you're going to go for the entrepreneurial story next. But in between, you're going to experience the uncertainty. But it also equals potential, and that equals opportunity. So embracing the uncertainty actually means creating opportunity. Because if, rather than resisting the uncertainty, you embrace it, then you are allowing yourself to entertain what else there might be. If you resist it, then you're stuck in whatever your original options were in the, let's say, employee mindset. I hope that makes sense. But if you have any questions about this, please do email me, because I'm refining this material. Maybe here it's a good time to pause and to mention imposter syndrome, because which is incompatible with authentic success, because by definition, by being in the imposter sort of habits, you're not being your true self. You're not expressing your true values and living your mission. You're doing things to prove that you're worthy, that you're not an imposter. And so it's really important to recognize this and learn to dismantle the imposter. And this is a very important area of work in my work. So number 4 out of 6 principles that I'm sharing today, reconnect and secure. So there are 3 places we reconnect once we've kind of accepted that this process of change, and we've got to a level where we have a bit more space within our heads and our hearts to entertain or embrace the new possibilities. Reconnecting with self. So being very clear about what you care about, being very clear and honest about it. And it does take a little bit of time to articulate all of these things. Reconnect with others who support you. So this is where you may say goodbye to some people, but welcome new people. So you create your own tribe who are supporting you in your vision and mission. And there's reconnecting with your environment. So if you're, for example, connected to a building where you go 9 to 5 to work as the employee, being able to work more flexibly, maybe have some time off and go and do your own thing, as if you were an entrepreneur, will be beneficial. So you get to then think about how can your environment support your new mindset, your new entrepreneurial approach to allow it to flourish. Then respond with skill. So this is where we start to take action. Now that we've gone through that process internally, we've started to create an environment, an ecosystem, both within and without us to support us, then it's time to take the action. So this is where you'll formulate a strategy for what you're going to do, whether it's a new job, whether it's the same job but with better terms, whether it's a completely new career, or whether you're just going to go and do the entrepreneurial path. And of course, there's the hybrid model where you have your own business and you're working in an organization. But the important thing is that you're responding, not reacting from old habits. So the imposter syndrome, for example, or paralysis after setbacks are gone, or they're looser. So you can respond from your new mindset where setbacks are not a bad thing. This is an opportunity to learn. So you spend less time sort of recovering from the setback and more time thinking, well, what did I learn from this? How can I do it better? And just get out there and try again. And it's important to remember that small steps are okay. It's easy to get overwhelmed and think, oh my God, now I can see what I need to do. I need to do all these things. This is the path. Yay. But then get paralyzed with the sense of it has to all be done now. That's like a bit like saying you have to eat all the food you're ever going to eat in your life now. It's not true. You don't need to do that. So small steps are okay. I think I'm missing a slide here. So I'll just... No, I'm not. This is some extra stuff about building blocks for your company of one. Some sort of practical things that you might want to incorporate in your strategy if you're going to start operating as an entrepreneur. So you are going to be the center of your world, and your gifts and talents are going to shine more freely. So you need your values with you. You need to know your message and your mission. That inspire you when even just as you think about them. That's a sign that it's your message and your mission, that when you speak it, it reconnects you. It dispels all the doubt and confusion. It reconnects you to to that still calm core from which amazing things can spring forth. It's good to articulate an offering. Now, if you're in a business, you definitely have to have a specific offering, like a service that you provide. But it's good practice as if you're in an organization to say, what I do is this. This is what I'm great at. I'm great at engaging with stakeholders. I'm great at formulating strategy. I'm great at analyzing complex patterns and explaining that in simple terms. And how I do it is by writing excellent reports. And this is what I've done over the last 2 years or something like that. Anyway, I won't I'll stop there. And essentially, you're going to start thinking of your work as intellectual assets that belong to your company. They don't belong to the organizations. Okay, fine. Maybe they do legally belong to your organization, but you still can claim them as assets for your company, and they can be written or spoken. So books, articles, podcasts, even when you speak, you can have materials around this, the speaking engagement that becomes an asset for you that you can present to others and gives you credibility, but also helps to share your message and what you're about. And community. This is not a lone job. A lot of people sometimes mention in the coaching process that, oh, but how do I now I know all of this, how do I keep doing this? It's not something that you kind of learn and then go off and do on your own. It's something that you build community around. So you may distance yourself from certain environments and certain people and welcome new ones that help you move forward and help you go through the process. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so the final principle for going from employee to an entrepreneurial mindset is to receive and celebrate. So that is often missed. We complete one challenge or one project and we're like, okay, right on to the next one. We don't like the space between stories because there's a bit of uncertainty there. And sometimes you have to wait for things to come through, for things to line up, for the next big opportunity to land in your lap. And if you act too quickly, you will create a detour and take yourself off your path. So it's important to have that, develop that intuition, like now it's time to wait. Now it's time to pause and celebrate what's already been achieved. If you've received success, that's also important to celebrate. And it's important to celebrate failures. And removing the negative overtone of failure, if you see it just as a sign that you're alive, a sign that you're out there pursuing your dreams, committing to your values, to your mission, to your message. And sometimes it doesn't work out the way you wanted it to. And we call that failure, but that's just an opportunity to learn and move forward and to feel alive. And to see this as a creative cycle. All of this is a creative cycle. We've created something in the first part of our lives, as through the employee mindset, for example. And now we're entering another cycle. And there are cycles within cycles. So whenever you've achieved something, you've kind of completed a creative cycle. And embrace the fact that we're going to do it all over again. And as we do, if we embrace that kind of attitude of learning, then we become more and more masterful at learning to turn our ideas into results that are meaningful to you, valuable to others, and for which you are paid. Okay, so I keep mentioning uncertainty, and the reason I do is because it's the core of living meaningful life, living an authentic, self-expressed life. If you think of existential angst, it's really that feeling that life's a bit uncertain. It's always changing. We can't really hold on to anything. Whatever we have now is going to leave at some point. And there's nothing we can do about that. We either embrace that and turn it into an opportunity, or we don't, and we fight it and we feel miserable and life becomes very difficult. So transforming anything in your life requires insight plus action. Resisting uncertainty creates doubt, which clouds insight and action, and that leads to procrastination and wasting energy, zigzagging, taking detours off your path. Of course, you could say there isn't one path, but it's just a way of capturing this idea that when you're connected to yourself and operating from your deep values, then your life feels more fulfilled. And if you're not doing that, then that's when you're zigging and zagging. Okay, so resisting uncertainty rather than embracing it is the #1 cause of forgotten dreams, in my opinion. So not a good thing. So worth embracing uncertainty as a first step. And my #1 piece of advice on this is, in the face of uncertainty, just commit to something. Commit to something that feels aligned for you, that feels like, yes, this is a small step, but I can do it. It feels good. It feels right, and I'm going to do it. So a quick recap. What I've talked about is sort of the surface level, or some headline principles for going from the employee to the entrepreneurial mindset and embracing this more entrepreneurial attitude. So it's about reconnecting with your big dream that maybe has been neglected or forgotten, or perhaps you have a new one, and that's great too. And then it's just about really articulating it. Embracing uncertainty. Otherwise, it feels like the big dream's impossible, because it's not possible within your current way of thinking and being in circumstances. So there's going to have to be some change, and that involves uncertainty. So embrace the uncertainty. Then be willing to leap one step at a time, test and learn, and appreciate. And then going deeper into the sort of cycle of change and the cycle of creativity, then the principles that I've identified underneath are to relax and energize, to reflect and prioritize, to release what no longer serves you, to reconnect and secure within you, not find security within the organization or the job. Respond with skill, not react from old habits, from the old employee approach, and to receive and celebrate. So what's possible if you embrace the uncertainty is that you start feeling confident about your career and work. Whatever comes up, you can handle. You start to accept that you don't have to do things you don't want to do. And then there's a feeling of freedom that arises because you are choosing. And when you're choosing things that inspire you, which reinforces this kind of sense of fulfillment. You start knowing that you are the source of your financial security, not your boss, not your organization, not your job, not your career. If you stay in your organization, you start turning up with a more positive outlook and a positive attitude, and that has benefits across the board. And then people start giving you opportunities because they understand what you're about and they see you're committed, you're unstoppable as a company of one. It's not everybody's going to like it, not everybody's going to support you, but when you show up authentically, the right people support you with the right opportunities. And this flies in the face of what imposter syndrome does, which is it's kind of tied to people pleasing, trying to please everyone, and that does not work with the entrepreneurial mindsets. So what makes this different that I've talked about? Because some of this you probably already know, you've come across before. I think what makes this different, at least from traditional kind of career advice, is that myself, having been through several career transformations and helping a growing number of people through those, I kind of have a good sense now on the other side. So this is not theoretical knowledge. This is lived knowledge that comes from having taken big, scary leaps in my life. I think that there's an acknowledgement in what I'm saying that the world has changed from, for example, our parents' generation. It's a lot more complex, it's a lot more fast-paced. And so the entrepreneur mindset is the more evolved mindset and the more adapted mindset. And the employee mindset is the vestigial. Maybe that's a little premature to say vestigial, but that's the older mindset. And definitely that letting go of trying to find security rather than being on a quest for security for the right job that will give you the right pension so you can retire with a nice income or something, which is more the agenda that our parents' generation had. Embracing uncertainty and turning it into an opportunity for creativity and contribution in an authentic way is the way forward. What does it take? Being open to stepping out of your comfort zone, commitment to the journey, and trust in yourself and the process. So why you showed up today maybe is that you know Job for Life is an approach that doesn't work anymore. You have a sense that something different is possible. There's a bit of a stirring maybe. It's time. You know you have a lot to offer, and you're willing to step out of your comfort zone. And what I offer, some of you are already registered to Wise Wednesdays, which offers the sort of weekly Wise Wednesdays articles, which try to share my journey and my understanding through. So if you're not subscribed, you're welcome to subscribe through my websites. The Leaders Circle, which I've mentioned, and I'll just say something about quickly in the next slide. And the Create a Career, I call it Create a Career and Life You Love process, which is kind of the process I described and that I use in my approach. I won't talk about that today. So quickly, if you're in London, or if you're not and want to come to London on the 27th of September, do come to Harley Street. I'll send you a link to register if you're interested. And essentially what this is the live sort of version of the webinar, so where we apply the concepts and ideas that were brought up in the webinar. So it's a diverse group of mission-driven professionals, a lot of doctors, but also lawyers, management consultants, managements, and corporate leaders. I've created it as a space and time to reflect and dialogue in a meaningful way that leads to moving forward in these important decisions in life as we move into a different phase of our career. It's an opportunity to network with like-minded professionals. I offer some transformational coaching and strategies that help with these deep mindset shifts that need to happen for us to really embrace the next part of our career and create it in a way that's authentic for us. And it's an opportunity to find out more about how I work. And people have said very nice things about it. Like Matt, who said it was really useful to share the experiences with each other and to have time to work through what it would look like to use the strategies we discussed. Okay, so that's the dates for the next webinar. I will send the link to register through by email tomorrow to everyone who was on the webinar. And I can't believe I finished on time. If you have any questions, I'm just going to check the chat now to see. Will you be sharing the slides? I think I will. I have to think about it because this is all like new material and I'm not sure if I'm happy with it yet. But thank you for asking. Yeah, let me log out of this thing. Okay. So back in the webinar room, as it were, if you have any questions, please, or any comments, please speak up now. Happy to also answer questions by email. Otherwise, all that's left for me is to say thank you very much for coming. Thank you for being willing to be my first recipients of this material. I'm quite excited about it because I feel it's bringing everything together that I've been working on the past year, if not 2 years. And I look forward to sharing more with you. And do come to the Leader Circle if you're in London. Okay, I feel like I should hear somebody say something, but I will leave it at that. So have a wonderful evening, and I will see you either on Wise Wednesdays or the Leader Circle or the next webinar. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.